recognize Mr. D'Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, thank you for being here this morning, this afternoon. Staffing shortages are disproportionately affecting New York City area airports. In fact, the New York TRACON, located right in the center of my district, is the key facility that directs planes in and out of the New York City area. It is staffed at 54% of the 2014 levels. This past Friday, the FAA announced that they will extend cuts to minimum flight service requirements at New York City area airports through October of 2024. Do you consider safety and maintaining normal operation as your foremost job as Transportation Secretary?
Yes, in that order. First safety, and then a close second, operational, smooth operations.
Thank you. Smooth sometimes. What is your plan for hiring and training enough air traffic controllers to meet current and future demand?
We recognize there is a clear gap that didn't build up overnight, but needs to be addressed quickly between how many controllers we have available and how many we think we should have. Matter of fact, we have trued up our estimates of the size of that gap and placed it at over 3,000. Now, the good news is we have 2,600 air traffic controllers in the pipeline right now. This year, we set and met our goal of hiring 1,500. Our budget request for the coming fiscal year would allow us to hire another 1,800. But of course, there's attrition that is draining the bucket, so to speak, just as we're filling it. We're finally getting ahead. But a shutdown would stop us in our tracks because it would shut down air traffic control training. It's one of many reasons we think it's so important to keep things up and running.
I agree with you. We should keep it up and running. You said you have 2,600 air traffic controllers in the pipeline.
Correct.
What does the pipeline actually mean?
So what that means is a training process that begins at the Academy in Oklahoma City, but it doesn't end there. Becoming qualified to work at an air traffic control facility, especially one as complex and important as N90, requires additional certification in that specific airspace with a lot of on-the-job training. And my understanding of the consequences of a shutdown is that on-the-job training would stop too. So people would be pulled, if they're not in a fully qualified status, they'd be pulled out of the towers, out of the TRACONs, unable to build that experience.
So you mentioned attrition. How many air traffic controllers did you lose in 2022?
I'll have to pull that number. What I'll tell you is we're finally getting to where we're adding more than we're losing, but not by much.
But out of that 2,600 number, that doesn't mean that all 2,600 of those individuals will become air traffic controllers. It's
True.
like like the New York City Police Department. You get in, you may not get out.
That's right.
Okay. Have there been any discussions about temporarily reassigning fully certified controllers from the other less impactful facilities to provide relief at New York TRACON?
I'd have to check on specifically with regard to the TRACON. What I can tell you is that we use reserve mechanisms or other approaches to the extent that it's possible under work rules to try to alleviate that. And let me also just make clear that the staffing level at the N90 TRACON is, in my view, unacceptable. We'll never allow anything to not be safe, but in terms of just the pressure that that's putting on the people who are there and on smooth operations, there clearly needs to be a swift path toward a higher
I agree.
ratio of
It's
staffing.
one of the reasons that during the FAA reauthorization, I fought so strongly to make sure that those individuals weren't leaving the TRACON facility and reassigned to Pittsburgh as the plans were in place. How do you plan to direct? There's 2,600 individuals in the pipeline. Let's just say, for argument's sake, half of them make it through. I don't really know what the numbers are that bring people through the training and eventually become air traffic controllers. How do you plan to direct additional controllers towards facilities with the most need, similar to ones like TRACON?
Well, that's why that training process is so important. Not just the foundational training you get at the academy, but the training that qualifies and prepares you to work in the most complex, challenging, and dynamic parts of the national airspace. And it's one of many, many reasons why we view it as so important to get FAA reauthorization done and to get an administrator confirmed so that he can lead that process of bringing those new controllers on board.
So now, we touched upon hiring, we touched around reassigning. What other actions is the FAA taking to maximize operational capacity at New York TRACON? You just mentioned, I think the term you used was unacceptable as to the staffing there. So what actions, besides the hiring and the reassigning, what other actions can be taken to maximize operational capacity at New York TRACON?
Well, you mentioned the waiver, which is something that has been a priority for the airlines operating in that area, and we think is reasonable in order to make sure that there is less likelihood that volume will lead to delays. We're also always assessing how technology can be part of the solution. As has been mentioned earlier in this hearing, there are a number of technologies that are outdated that need modernization that can make everybody involved in the aviation process, including controllers, more productive and more effective. They're doing a great job, but we need to make sure we back them up with the best technology and with adequate overall staffing levels. We think our plan will do just that, but it's got to get funded, and we've got to avoid any unnecessary politically driven disruptions like a shutdown.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.